Okay, I'm gonna start now. Okay, this is my book. That's me. I work as a library assistant, Main Street School. Everyone who's here already knows that. This is my book. It's called Blue. It's a graphic novel. Graphic novel is a fancy word for a comic book. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
A comic book. This is art by Alex Ross. All of his art is like paintings for the most part. So I'm gonna try and argue why comic books are like a really superior, not superior, that's me, but like a really high class medium. And I'm gonna talk about like why, basically why I love comic books and why I chose to make a comic book.
Woo!
Okay. Here, comic book, the word comic book is kind of like derogatory because it originates from like when mobsters owned all the newspapers and they would fold up like the comic strips from newspapers. I just said that. And fold them up and sell them as like a little book to kids, and it was like a cheap little classless thing. And it wasn't thought of as something that you can make like advanced art from. It was something cheap that was disposable that people would just throw away. So the word comes from that, but really it means much more than that. These are other comic books, graphic novels, comic books. You can actually get them, I think, in the store. My favorite thing is Monsters. That's a book that is like taught in college classes. It's like got very serious themes. It's, I don't know, if you were to read that, you would know like really cool, serious things can be made in this medium. March is an autobiography of John Lewis that is also about like the desegregation movement. And Understanding Comics is a comic book about comic books, explaining what I am explaining right now, basically. I'm gonna talk about like what makes comic books uniquely different from film and reading and books as a medium. So film is a series of pictures. Like here's a horse on a horse jockey, and you see like the progression of little pictures being taken of each movement. And if you were to take this reel of images and feed it into a projector, it would play really fast, all of the pictures one after the other, and it would look like motion. It would look like it's actually happening. And so a comic book is just like this. It's an assembly of photos, but there's no projector, and instead your mind is the projector. So in that way, I think a comic book is much more involved and immersive than any other medium, because you are a participant in the motion of the story. Here is, I'm going to show a little clip, a clip from my book using this projector. So what you just saw, I just showed it like this, like as a series of panels. But if you were to read it in my book, you see it all at once. You don't get each individual image. So there's no projector there to move through the story at its own pace. See, when I do this, I'm controlling the pace of it. You have to do a lot less work. You're just looking, you see the hand moves in, you see where the hand's coming from, the girl grabs the guy, they hold each other. If you see the comic book page, all of it's given to you, and you have to move from panel to panel at your own pace. You decide where to linger. Maybe you want to spend more time looking at one panel. And so I think that when you are the projector, I already said this, but I'm just reiterating. When you're the projector, you're a piece of the art. That's part of why I love comic books, and why I chose to do that over like writing a regular book, which I've written short stories and stuff, but I chose this for now. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made this project in particular. So in 2020, can't really see it that well here, but this is a crude pencil drawing of the first page of my book. And it was like pandemic times. I was in college. I was in my dorm room, alone. You weren't allowed to be within like 5 feet of another person at the school, and so you couldn't have any friends over at your apartment. And if you didn't, I went ahead. If you didn't have like good friends at the time, you were not going to be able to make them. So it was a very, like, everyone was depressed pretty much at that time. At least I was. And I've always wanted to make a comic book. I've always loved comic books. And what was in the way of that is, like, you want the thing you make to be great, and you want to have a full picture of what it's going to be. But I just set that aside and just impulsively, like, made this drawing of this bald character turned away in the first words, there's something horribly wrong with me. That's how I felt. And a year later, I took that first drawing, I put it on thicker paper, and I painted this drawing here. Also, I wrote the words for it directly on the painting, on the paper, which you're not supposed to do for a comic book. So it gives it this, like, it's almost like you're reading the actual journal of, like, the character, because it's like he's written it in pencil. Also, it's kind of breaking the format of a comic book. You can see here, like, it doesn't have panels like that other part I showed earlier. It's words with pictures, and I think I did that because I had a lot to say, but I didn't necessarily have, like, a clear story to tell. It was kind of like a constant stream of consciousness, but with pictures that supplement the story. And also I've got, like, I don't know if I said this already, but it's cool. I have, like, a narrator talking and a protagonist with speech bubbles having a conversation with the narrator. You know, you're not supposed to make a comic book writing the words directly on the paper. You're supposed to keep them separate so that you have, like, a preserved version of both things. But I think doing it this way made it a lot more personal. And I see. I don't know, the rest of the book, I didn't do it this way, but those first, like, 5 pages are really unique. Because, I don't know, they break all the rules. It's like a picture book. Okay. Also, I got, this book got banned off of this app I used, like a comic book app, because they didn't want you to have, like the guys getting shot in the face. They really didn't like that, because they thought they'd have, like, middle school kids going through, and they didn't want. So that's just kind of a funny thing. They wanted me to censor it, and I wouldn't do it. That was Webtoon. Webtoon wouldn't accept Blue. They wouldn't accept my comic. And they also thought this was, like, too suggestive, because it's, like, I don't know, the outline of a girl's chest. Really funny. Another year later, I made, like, this other page on bigger paper, because these, I was just using, like, notebook paper, or sketchbook paper, which you're supposed to use, like, fancy, thick paper, and I was using, like, tiny little paper, whatever I had. It was very improvisational, the whole thing, and then it became something much more artful and more advanced. The first pages I made using the watercolors I found in my grandma, I call her Nana, my Nana's studio after she died. And you can see I used all of the color blue from it, and so I needed to get more. And I didn't really like I mean, it was cool, like, the art looks different that I made using these pans, but I wasn't able to achieve a certain level of detail because I felt like I had less control over the paint, because it's, like, I don't know, it's just harder, artist jargon. I switched to tubes, So it's more like when you make acrylic paint, when you paint with acrylics this way, and you have more control of like the quantity of paint that you put on the page. This is actually the paper that I drew. I always lay out newspaper on my desk, and then I paint directly on that. And so all these little marks are marks that were made while I was painting the book, actually. That's my little thing for water. That's the ink I use. Yeah, this is like my work desk. Okay, this is just like a panel from the book. It marks like, so there was a year between when I made this, another year here. So it was like 4 years, and we only get 6 pages in 4 years, which is funny. And I was able to achieve like this level of detail that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't switch to paint tubes. But I put this in because I'm just really proud of, like, I don't know if you can see it the way I do, but it's like you can see the reflection of the surface of the water on his skin. And that's just like, I'm amazed that I was able to do that. This is just an example of how I do it too. So for the rest of the book, after I was doing this improvisational thing where I wrote directly on the paper, I made storyboards. I didn't show the storyboards, but I storyboarded. So I planned out every page, and I then drew I would draw like a final draft quality version of it in graphite, and then I would, like a pencil, and then I would trace it onto watercolor paper. And it's funny, the watercolor paper is like bigger than the pencil paper, so like I had to extend the page. It's like I had to redraw it a little bit when I put it onto thicker paper. This is my favorite page from the book. That's why I put it here. And I just wanted to say the color on this page, on the screen you see here, and also in the book, is not as bright or vibrant as it is in person. And I'm saying that because, and also it's like hanging on my wall. And so to me, every page isn't just like a page in a comic book. It's like a painting. You know, this is hanging on my wall like a painting. And so like, basically I want you to think of the book not just as a story, but as like an art book. And that's why I made the paper is on bigger paper, or the book is on bigger paper, so that you can take your time to like look and appreciate the art. And I didn't go to art school, but I've taken some art classes, and I think it's pretty good. So, yeah, that's all I got to say. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, cool. Okay, I also, I've got free stickers.
Stickers!
Yeah, and also some art prints.
Are you willing to answer questions?
Yeah, I'll answer all the questions you have. Yeah. Yeah?
Do you have any plans to turn this into a film? Because I understand you have a film degree.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't have it. Honestly, not right now. I don't. I'm writing more. I have another, like, how many pages am I into? I'm like 26 pages into the next book right now, finished.
Book 2?
Book 2. Yeah, this is book 1. And the next book is going to be like probably triple the length of this one. I don't know. Slow goings. Yeah?
You said it took like 3-4 years to make like 6 pages. How long did it take you to make the rest? Did you just like buckle down and work on it?
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I was, during that time, it was just one of the things I was working on, and I don't know. I was depressed and didn't spend a lot of time working hard on anything. So, so yeah, I buckled down. I like moved home, and I had a lot of free time, and yeah, I just worked really hard, like it was a full-time job to get it done. And once I started doing it full time, it took like 6 months to finish the whole thing, I think. Yeah, it was still a lot of work. And I also published it entirely, like, myself. Everything you see on the book, all designed by me, the whole thing.
So,
Yeah.
Daniel, you say you were doing this full time, but were you also working a full-time job?
Yeah, I was. I was.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What-
So yeah.
And what's your favorite part of this whole process?
Oh, the coolest thing is like my favorite moment from this whole thing is when I finished painting that page. Like, cause that, to me, I had this vision of what I wanted it to look like from when it was a storyboard. Somehow I was able to make it, like, rarely when you're making art can you get something to look like exactly the way you wanted it to be. And I was just like, I don't know. The best feeling is when I finish painting something and it's drying and I just know it looks awesome. Yeah. Yes?
You still use, use the tubes of
Yeah.
paint?
Yeah, I'm using tubes right now. I have my blue tube I've used so much it popped and I had to buy a new one. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know, how did you publish it? Where did you go to get it printed and all that?
So I used the same people I used before to make a short story. It's called Mix'em. They're just like, I think they're in the UK, and you can just they like print comic books. I just sent them like the files of every page, and they like turn it into a book. It's cool, but I do a lot of technical stuff beforehand. Like I gotta, the print colors are different than the colors on a computer. So there's a lot of color editing that goes into it. But it's kind of like you just send it to the printer. All you really have to do is write like published by and make it look professional, and it is professional, and you gotta pay to get it made, and then it's real. Yeah.
I understand, thought, you have a mission kind of to make sure people appreciate what comic books are. Could you explain that a little?
Well, I think the world is changing, and comic books are becoming very well appreciated by most people. Like, I can tell that working in a library. They have like a much bigger graphic novel section probably in any place where books are sold or are collected. There's more comic books now than there once was. I think that's a positive effect of like the Marvel movie stuff happening. Like superhero movies gained popularity, comic books gained popularity, but I still think, there's always people who don't appreciate art in general, so the battle is still being fought. But I think calling comic books graphic novels, while I prefer the word comic book, it's a step in the right direction. Yeah.
I work at a comic book store.
Okay.
I have a very unique perspective on this as well.
Cool.
During the pandemic and afterward, most people decided to get back into comic books.
Oh, cool.
So that was another huge reason why they've surged recently in the last few years.
Oh.
And the word graphic novel, from my understanding, especially the way we use the words in the store, is when it was published all at once as a singular story. So like DC's been putting out like smaller ones that they don't come out as single issues, they come out as a book, and those are specifically marked as graphic novels too.
Okay.
So it could be an emerging trend of using the terminology different too.
That's true. I think also the first person to use it was Will Eisner, because he's the first guy to publish. He wanted to make he published a book, and it, like you're saying, it wasn't a comic book, it wasn't serialized, and it just came as a book. And he knew the potential of the art form, but the world really did not. I think this was in like the 70s or the 80s. And he has like a whole blurb explaining the legitimacy of it. The beginning that I suggest you read. It's called A Contract with God. That's another. I should have put that book in there. Okay. Yes, Steve.
When you were younger, did you ever think you would end up with your own book one day, or did you ever want to do that?
I know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
So you started off with the idea and the drawing of the character, and you said that was from your feelings during the pandemic. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How did you go from that to expanding it into the whole story?
That's a
How
good-
did that evolve?
Well, it's bigger than just feeling sad, because it's also like, my dad was saying earlier, it's about like your 20s angst too. So, and that's like, there's a lot that I can pull from that, you know? I also, one of the things that the character talks about is like not wanting to get like a real job. He's working in like a snack shack, which isn't a job I've ever had, but like when I was writing it, I was a senior in college and I was supposed to be applying to jobs, to film jobs. Now I work in a school. I didn't want those jobs. And so, I don't know, I put that into it. Anything that I feel, I don't know, it just kind of flows out of me.
Okay.
Someone was asking me, is it hard to, like, it must be really, or someone told me it must be really hard to put something so personal into the writing. But the funny thing is, the writing is actually like the easiest part of it to me. Turning it into something big, that comes easy. The hard part is the art to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, Chris?
Where does like the I guess inspiration for your art style kind of come from?
My favorite comic book artist is named David Mack. Yeah. He's cool. He does a lot of watercolor stuff. This page in particular, I was looking at like his work on Daredevil. He draws superhero comics and independent comics, and I just think he's brilliant. He has like he's also does some kind of collage stuff. You know, he's like a fine artist in every sense. I also like Frank Miller and Jack Kirby, and I like the comic book Berserk. Kentaro,
Would you ever do a Kirby-esque type of art?
I do sometimes try to mimic him. Yeah,
Like
I would.
super hyper sci-fi type of stuff?
Sci-fi is hard for me. I have to want to do it. It has to come to me. You had a question.
I actually two. One is, where are your books available?
They're available here tonight. Yeah.
And would you sign a book if someone bought it to make it a collectible?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a first edition too.
There you go.
You could have asked them. My other question is, did this whole process mitigate your depression?
Oh yeah, totally.
Good.
Yeah. Also, but the reality is, depression, and it's like a mental illness. It's an illness. You can't just cure it with art. You need like medication or therapy or both. I used both, and I feel great. Yeah, but also like when it comes to the most helpful thing about the art in that respect is that a lot of the time, the way that like this becomes a big thing is that they come from like what's the word? Like delusions, like depressive delusions are like a very powerful, compelling thought. You know, something that's really upsetting that you can ruminate about for like a long time. I get a lot. Those are juicy for me. I get like a lot of good art from stuff like that. Yeah, it's grim, but I mean, it's
There's
great.
a lot of production at that
Yeah.
point.
So like, but the cool thing is once it comes out and it's like has physical, it's been manifested, you can see how crazy it is, you know, and so it leaves you. I find like I had like a really crazed angst film I was trying to make in college that I've given up on. Steve is in it. I gave up on it.
That's okay. It was fun to be a part of.
Yeah, my friend, I made him like pretend that I killed him with a hammer, and I like put my finger in his mouth to rub fake blood on his teeth. I think about that every time I brush my teeth. Yeah, and it all for a film that won't get made. But making that film helped my mental health a lot, because I was a lot less angsty because I saw how crazy the thing I thought was. Yeah, but yeah.
Well, you're brave for speaking out.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Steve?
I'm just curious, like, you may not know, but do you have a sense of how many books there will be? Or are we just going with the flow and seeing where it takes you, kind of?
Right now, I have storyboards for another, like, 60 pages. And, I have a written, like, a treatment, if you include, for, like, an additional, like, 30, 40 pages. So I have a lot of content to make. The final idea of this is to have it all in a big, like, hardcover collection. And it won't be, like, too big, because, you know, I'm one person. So it's hard when you're the writer and the artist. It's kind of crazy to do that. Most people in comic books, no one really does that unless they're,
Jeff
I don't know.
Lemire.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's hard. So, yeah, I don't know. My final vision of it is something that's like 120 pages. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Both
Would you,
books.
All the whole thing altogether.
if the right opportunity came around, would you ever work with another, like, artist or author on a book?
On a different book, yeah.
Yeah.
But this thing is my baby. This will always be mine, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming.